Hey everybody, remember when I said I was gonna review some Jane Austen like 6 months ago? Well, I didn't forget. I've just been having a hard time deciding where to start. Do I go in publication order, or would it be okay if I just read whatever suits my mood? I've decided to do just that, since that's what I usually do. I'm very much a mood reader. That probably means that the one I read most recently, Persuasion, which was, what was that, a year or 2 years ago? I did mention it on here. Probably means that that one will go last, but that would have been last if I'd gone in publication order, so we're kind of in the same position. Either way, I still ended up starting with Jane Austen's first and most beloved novel, originally titled First Impressions, but published as Pride and Prejudice in 1813. I'd read Pride and Prejudice 3 or 4 times before this. My first time was in 4th grade. I have 2 copies. One I got as a gift from my sister when I turned 12, the other that I got as part of a Scholastic book order set when I was in 6th grade, also 12. I've read each of these copies at least once, plus the library book, plus I think I read my sister's copies, so this was probably my 5th time reading it, but it's been a long time since the last time, at least 10 years, so I've been eager to revisit it. I don't know, do I need to do a plot summary for this? Pride and Prejudice tells the story of the Bennet family and their 5 daughters. Because there's no son to inherit, the estate is entailed away in the event of the father's death, so it's important that the girls find husbands to secure their future. But finding and keeping respectable matches proves to be quite difficult. I have wondered if I would love it now as much as I used to. I'm so much older and more sophisticated now. I've read so many more books. But it doesn't make any difference. I needn't have worried. Even if the story is very familiar to the reader, as it is in my case, I've known the story since I was 6. It's impossible not to become engrossed in the telling. I always find new things to pick up on, and especially this time, I paid a lot of attention to the growth and transformation of the 2 main characters, Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy, whose love story, of course, is one of the most timeless in all of literature. But really all of Austen's characters, the lovable and the repellent, are so vibrant and memorable, and the awkward and distressing difficulties that the protagonists find themselves in are so relatable. There's also nothing quite like Austen's mastery of the English language. I really appreciate a well-turned phrase, and there are certain lines and speeches so sharp that I'm always compelled to read them aloud. They're just too good not to. I do delight in her absurd depictions of the more ridiculous personalities. There are several, and her commentary is most searing when it comes to the more despicable individuals whose flaws she exposes in prose sparkling with sarcastic wit. That said, I did find it a little tedious to get through some of the Wickham portions, just because he's such a scumbag and he gets more unbearable with every repetition. But on the flip side, I found myself sympathizing with Darcy more than ever. He and I have some traits in common, I think. Not that I'm rich, but that I'm reserved, that I'm socially awkward, that I am an indifferent conversationalist at times, that I don't want to get up and dance with people I don't know. There were 2 things that really stood out to me this time when I read the book. One thing was that Darcy smiles a lot more than the adaptations give him credit for. Not that he's, like, grinning or anything, but he does smile. His face does move. And the other thing was how frequently Darcy and Elizabeth actually see each other. They don't just have, like, 3 conversations and then boom, he proposes. No, they see each other quite a lot, especially during her visit at Rosings, and it made me laugh to think that probably every single one of those interactions with her counted for something in his mind. She might be thinking, ugh, why does Mr. Darcy keep showing up in the park at the same time as me every day? I told him this was my favorite walk so that he could avoid it. But he's like, yes, I intercepted her in the park again. We didn't really talk much, but it was totally like a date. There were also two chapters that really stuck out to me when I read it this time. One was chapter 36, where Elizabeth reacts to Darcy's letter. It's a crucial turning point for the story, as well as for both of their characters, and I thought it was marvelously executed. The other is chapter 60, the second to last chapter, in which Darcy and Elizabeth finally have their feelings all sorted out, and so they can be more relaxed. They're just talking, and it's the first time since before his first proposal, I think, that Elizabeth allows herself to be playful and tease him, and it's just wonderful. If you have any lingering doubts about them as a couple going forward, I think this seals the deal. Let's see, what else? I love Elizabeth's aunt and uncle, the Gardiners, especially Mrs. Gardiner, when she's being cheeky with Elizabeth toward the end of the book. I love Elizabeth's relationship with her father. Mr. Bennet is another favorite character of mine. I actually, just for giggles, I took a Which Pride and Prejudice character are you quiz last night, and honestly, I thought I would get Darcy just because, but no, I got Mr. Bennet. I'm okay with that. I find his affection for Elizabeth, who is unquestionably his favorite, really touching, especially when he voices his concern of seeing her end up in a situation where she can't respect her husband, something which is plainly an allusion to his own situation. The drastic way Charlotte Lucas's encouragement and acceptance of Mr. Collins affects her friendship with Elizabeth always fascinates me. I also feel really sorry for Anne de Bourgh and always wonder what happens to her. She isn't exactly a negative character. Her only faults are that she's sickly and uninteresting. So I do wonder, what could she be like if she could just get away from Lady Catherine's dominating, overbearing presence? I know that Jane Austen's stories are often called romantic comedies, and I suppose in the sense that they have happy endings, not tragic ones, they are, and they are very humorous besides. But I often find Austen's subject matter more serious than the frivolous rom-com label implies. Sure, Pride and Prejudice is a book about young women hunting for husbands, but it's quite a dire situation they're facing, if you think about it, trying to select a suitable partner from among a relatively small group of local candidates. And the choice of a spouse is a lifelong decision, with benefits or consequences that the individual will reap for the rest of his or her life. I think that still applies today, even though we live in a time where divorce is socially accepted and prevalent. But hey, it is a comedy, and Austen never lets things get too serious for too long. Anyway, it was quite nice to revisit the book after all this time, especially since it did not disappoint. And before you ask, yes, I will be reviewing some Pride and Prejudice adaptations. I'd love to know what you think of Pride and Prejudice, the book, so go ahead and share your thoughts on it in the comments below. I really look forward to reading them and discussing it with you. And until next time, thanks for watching!